nze kulwange mbadde njagala kutwala different direction era mami eno kujja kunsonyiwako ekyo nze njagala gitunulamu from a regulation setting perspective nti nze nteekawo amateeka regulation eteekawo gye bateekawo first of all ku F1 tebagiteekawo mu dakika 5 bagitwala mu bbanga nga bagiplaningira era manufacturers bano babeerayo mu input yaabwe bagiteekamu mu regulation so regulation egenda kuteekebwawo ng'abakulu already balina idea gyetulaga so mu development yo process ya motoka yo obeera n'obudde okukola regulation kantwalemu for example nga ffe mu rally regulation egenda kukyuka mu 2027 ekyo bakitugambye situation gye tuli mu ku fine tuninga kuva mu either tusigala mu rally 1 car oba tugenda kukyusa tufune gundi WRC tuka ne tugimprovingako so regulation eri around there kati ba manufacturer obudde bwe bateekamu mu kukola plan zaabwe it is manufacturer yeke nyini nze ku lwange ba manufacturer njagala kulaba budget ze muyina ziri capped muyina sente ze zimu era ekitegeeza nti obwongo bwammwe muyina obuteekamu okufuna kye mwagala so nze ku past ya F1 eno nga ngitunulamu engeri gye wagambye nti lwaki tiimu emu evaamu nga buli lunaku edominatinga nze ku lwange mbadde ngamba nti tiimu zino endala tebateekamu nnyo effort okumakinga sure nti you recover from a change kubanga nyinza okuteekawo ekintu netakola but I must be able okubeera ne plan B nti such that bwe batekoze nsobola okurevolvinga nsobola okureactinga nenkomawo kumpi kubanga okuvaako ffe bafaana okugenda wali okulaba ekiriwo kyetulikaawo ye motoka ze batunda for example ku ssaawa zino omuntu asobola wali abantu abagula motoka nga it is $500,000 $600,000 nga reason okugula emmotoka eyo lwokubanga engine evamu eri McLaren car yerimu muli technology eri gyagendamu so ne parts ze bakozesa bazikozesa mu other ventures so it's a big business that we're talking about so for me to be Mercedes for example okay Mercedes we can say let me say for me to be Ferrari nebanga ku Formula 1 agenda siriko nga mu races zonna sirabikako wagulawo it affects my factory in production of Ferrari cars it affects my business there it affects my production of parts that I sell for other equipment that is used that the technology comes from my Formula 1 performance so kiba kitegeeza nti in my own view banda banti bana basajja balina okweyongeramuko they must try to prove to themselves that they can do best with the regulation so wetukomawo ku race of course the McLaren team has started from last season ngetulaga nti yo eze ate ba driver but the two drivers nabo ne batulaga towards the end of the season we are the new blood on the block we are young we're ready to go kati wetutunga ku the rest of the guys for example for those of us who are in Ferrari we have a world champion in our paddock in our pits we have a promising driver young man in the pit but we're nowhere to be having a discussion tebatwogera nako olwaleero weba oyogera ku Formula 1 race Ferrari bakujjukira nga abantu bamaze kwogera ne bagenda so you are not part of the conversation so as a manufacturer kiba kiraga nti ki mwinamu we mulakinga you have Lewis who is a very good product you have Leclerc who is a very good product nenga you're not anywhere so the manufacturer needs to go back home and think so what when chitunulamuko
McLaren doesn't fed down in my view I think it's theirs to lose
yeah absolutely it is completely theirs to lose kati mbadde njagala just in one line mpozigire Albert ekibuuzo awadde example
yalabiddwa abali kufa TV there were a number of sporting but that is Thomas Tuchel coach wa England Dabeko Saka this Arsenal player
yes
they're all there to Spain to grace it comes as it comes along with celebrities ngabali ku that is Jude Bellingham daba this Chelsea captain James as well in there nga bazze okulaba that research making point.
Yeah, kati Albert awadde example nungi nnyo in line with manufacturer nekyafunamu development ya F1 car, how it relates back to the road car in terms of technology. Kakati mbadde njagala mubuuze bw'otuuliramu FIA esazeewo okugamba nti katukwate zino regulations tuziluzingemu just a tiny bit okumakinga sure nti these manufacturers are a little bit on more level ground. Tekigenda kuyamba kuzimba competition eyo egenda okuyamba okuba manufacturer okulowooza even better to improve this technology so that there is more competition between them at the highest level.
I agree with you. Nkiriziganya nawe kubanga the competition side yange ngamba FIA webegenda ku switching a regulation and not just switching a regulation towards immense competition. Kubanga ffe tuba tuzze kulaba competition. Ffe abawagizi. Tuba twagala competition. Bino ebyokubeera nga gundi yawangula bulijjo, a number of people go back home. So ekyo kyo mu the FIA development crew balina okkirowoozako nnyo. Kubanga eno dominance, yes, this dominance looks nice, naye nga after some time ejja kubeera boring. Nga you don't switch on the TV. Kubanga you basically know who is going to win. Naye nga about celebrities, in Monaco, I think we had Emmanuel Kato was also in Monaco. I saw pictures of him there and some other Ugandans. So so we also as F1 and the federation we want to get there to meet those people and also be there and say Ugandans were also in that particular thing because ekiba kiraga nti Uganda weeri, the country Uganda is there. Those celebrities, there is a lot of coverage on them and it is important that we get there and see and let people know we are there. If Emmanuel is there, how did he get there? Is he there as a Ugandan or is there as Emmanuel Kato himself? So we need to use that Emmanuel presence to spread the word around about our country.
Maybe actually omanyi mbali ne light bulb moment wayogedde ku celebrities, Albert ayogedde ku celebrities. Kakati kyeki tugaana wano mu FMU yaffe ya Uganda okugenda okuleeta celebrity oba tulese Isaac oba tulese Elijah Kitaka oba tulese Joshua Baraka ajja ku ceremonial start oba najja ku awards whenever they happen.
It's a huge and for us it's part of strategy because even FIFA as well has been if you've been very well following up proceeding wherever there's always been these artists who make shows around Kampala. FIFA has normally been buying tables for their very own. They get players,
yes.
And even sometimes in the parents, and you have players and the parents sitting and gracing the being part of the occasion. Recognition. It's not about off the pitch. Yes. There's a lot. We shouldn't really confine ourselves into only everything ends around the pitch. We're gonna even these celebrities, games. You're gonna cleanse like in that game, I saw one King Michael coming to Kadiba and watching where he passes, where he was, and he was very inquisitive. Experience. Became a bit late towards the beginning of the game. He can't even inquisitive. Even these celebrities overall games, you see them coming as well to support because one of them are in attachment ne club. I've seen different many of them performing, winning Waji, Spice Dana, very many of them performing on different functions to not okulagana what but even when it comes to other activities.
Kubanga sports and entertainment is there are two things that need to go
and F1 really brings it out clearly because whenever there's a race there's always part F1 they're very strategic. You see Celine Dion, you see rather you see Jennifer Lopez rather you see very many of them coming out to when David Guetta in one of those events
ne producer ageze nankuba akama wano nti ne Albert wado chimanyi We are in the midst of a celebrity.
We're going for a short commercial break. We'll come out. The Dora heads to Italy, Rally Sardinia, and we have a lot. We have just produced there because a compilation of some of the stats which are really, really worth a discussion for this show. Let's get back on the short commercial break. All right, we'll be back from that short commercial break. It's the Podium show back every single Monday from 10 p.m. to midnight, where we preview and review the latest in the world of sports on the local scene, African scene, as well as on the international scene. You can as well watch this program using the FUFA Media app, which you can download from the Play Store or App Store. You'll definitely be able to watch FUFA TV on Okwiza 102.1 FUFA now sinziro kubangoli across the entire world, as well as neku YouTube FUFA TV, the home of Ugandan sport, also kubanga program eno as well as other subsequent programs. It's better FUFA TV, the home of Ugandan Sports. Now, who is on 2.1 FUFA using the FUFA Media app. You also you get the downloading from the App Store or from the Play Store. Every single Monday, for in the world of motorsport, local scene, African scene, as well as on the international scene. Last week, in Vora, and the reactions I got after that interaction, yeah, huge, enormous, and keep pushing us to even perform much better. Now, Vora. Teyasoma muvora oboli ali muwagizi waffe yagala muvora teyasoma katabo kaffe naivora agenda ovaamu ng'akulembederayo with a minute and 31 seconds 31 seconds also kati naye ng'ate Karan teyali talaga nti agenda kulwana because that lead agireta mu stage ya ng'avudde mu Muhanji ajja mu service ajje akole kaguta n'akole kawo. So mukaguta the second stage on Sunday mwaviiramu. Very unfortunate. Naye balaga nti yasoma akatabo kaffe kaali kagamba nti leading the rally for the bigger part of it. I don't know just talo kawo naye the time zali zaoka notes katabo kamera mu strategy yala and back end first note said how you plan
gamba oyajana mbanvira katabo akamo nato yakomyoni yira
ne bagambe nti yena anonya guy ninga meya ko kujja 2019 you laugh off your head. But I'd like to Vora. Very good interaction.
Mbalija kugambako ekintu ekimu mwami Kenya. Akatabo ako sikabi naye njagala kugamba ekintu ekimu kyolina okwetegereza. Omupiira webe yabise otwala dakika mmeka ogikyusa.
Our crew?
Crew eyo ku standard yabwe batwala dakika mutwala dakika mmeka okukyusa omupiira.
Average 2.5 minutes.
2.5 minutes. Abada leading a rally by how many minutes?
1 minute and 30.
About a minute. Singa yafuna puncture abada leading a rally. He was looking for a difference of 2.5 minutes.
Yeah,
so even if I get a puncture, I still lead the rally. Abada ina chanonya.
The interaction we had last week. Yagamba they didn't they did not tame themselves. True. And even after the show, message them go why. Now Buza, you guys finished the event. Yeah, we know. Oh, how did you do it? So Nemula got strategy. I wish I had borrowed this. I was about to Buza.
Albert. Okay. Bozi, Podium 2024. Bukenya malira wa?
Podium 2020 Bukenya.
Twali bakusatu mu Division 1. Because of the issues we had that time.
Now there are issues. Oyo musajja adatutte kumpi n'omukulu is an African champion. Million
3 times. Yeah.
Kakati bo mu strategy yaabwe ngawe nze mbadde ndaba mukulu ng'avuga omukulu from day one we yatandika section esooka yali azze wano okuba African champion yadde program ye kati ye
and he had swung all the support to him, by the way. Everyone wanted who can do it,
okay,
give
support
it.
like,
even including Enoch trying to proving a rally. Like the only driver is going to give Karani a run for his money is Sam Mavaro.
So for him as a competitor, he proved his point. And now I do not believe that it was the time to back off, in my own opinion. He had 2 stages. He did Ankole Cow. He was doing Kaguta and Ankole Cow. If he went to the first time he went through those things, he set a very good pace. So he needed to continue that. After Ankole Cow and back into service was when you could have a discussion about your Katabu.
Okay, give and take. There's some word on the scene. That kind of talk. Could transport ya okujokola Ankole Cow ne Kaguta, which was the second last loop of the day of the rally. We got communication from the organizers and they are cancelling the power stage. So for us, we didn't need to fully commit in those 2 stages. That's why we even didn't win those stages. Even the driver himself, Charlie Chiaga, it sank in his mind. They go, okay, how are you approaching this? Let's do this. And we just went through and kept the car clean on the road, not even knocking a mosquito. Okay, the driver said to Italy, producer so but still this year, that man walked down the aisle. It should be. Adrian Fomo as well walked down the aisle, but it's not easier. Elfin Evans, I do. It's now or never, it might be.
Well, yes, absolutely. Nzikira tuina forum je tulikeyo je twali tudebating ekintu ekyo. Nayenga of course yeah, kireta mu enjawulo mu muntu as naturally nga wobeera as omusajja wobeera single, then you decide to take that extra step, you know, of your life to get your partner or to marry your long-term partner. Definitely mubeera mu enkyukakyuka mu how you're going to live your life from then on. Nayenga abantu bano wetwogerako they are professionals, bategeera kye bakola, bategeera omuzannyo gwe balimu ne balina okutuukiriza, but still era ng'omuntu obeera omuntu one way or the other that is going to affect your psyche at a certain level, at a certain rate. So yeah, I mean nze ngamba era ne kati nkyagamba nti Kayiro Bampera gwe twatandika okulaba okuva mu rally ya Canarias okutuuka mu Portugal gye twavudde kati tasigala ku mutendera ogwo gwaliko ogwa peesi gyalaze mu rally eseki Evans sorry naye yeah, unfortunately Evans talina busobozi bw'omwakinga peesi ya kale on a very good day on a rally. So nzaawo ndabawo enkyukakyuka nnene okuggyako nga Toyota nga team esazewo n'egamba nti kati team orders are taking charge, which would be just about probably the first time that would ever happen in Toyota since they returned to the WRC. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I'll be.
Njagala nnyo okuviewinga what we have. Woba ogenze mu kwanjula waliwo ekijjulo kye bawa simanyi ono aze kuwasa baba bamuyitani omuko kati ku WRC ekijjulo bakitaddewo. I believe race is going to be about how they're going to get Evans. Mu ndowooza yange we're going to have a very exciting WRC season. Era abantu abagenda kuteekawo performance gye tugenda kwewunya mulimu abantu basatu. Mulimu Kayiro Bampera oyo, muli Oit Tanak, mulimu Thierry Neuville. Abo abantu abasatu abo bagenda kukola ki? Bagenda kuteekawo performance egenda twewunya. Omuzee ozi agenda kukomawo ku manufacturers titles ku events ezimu ayongere ku spicinga ebintu ebyo. Lwaki ngamba bwe tugenze mu section ya championship ekiri ku which is on gravel. Evans agenda kubeera on first on the road for the next 3-4 events. Ekibadde mu Portugal etulaga what happens. Bali abakulu babaddeko first on the road singa babalaba. Kayiro Bampera, Oje, ne Thierry. Na end of day one besanga nga bali around between 4th and 5th. or 6th naye ne bavaayo ne bakomawo ne balwana naye Evans yabadde mu position eri naye yalemeddwa okuvaayo nga he has good road position on the day 2 n'alema okuvaayo ku challenging abakulu bano era ono muvubuka bamuyitani Sami Paere yamaze olunaku lwonna nga amunoonya natamufuna paka we yagenda ku last day Sami Paere ne woba okebedde ku Toyota Sami Paere bamugambe togenda nnyo otherwise singa yalemeddeko yandiganye okufuna position eyo so ze kyendowooza first of all section mu event gye twavuddeko mu Portugal Saturday stages za Tanak ku Saturday zabadde real Tanak ng'akomyewo power steering emotoka yeyamuletinze down then ku Sunday stages za Tanak neza Thierry zabadde stages zaabwe nga bwe balwana Rovanpera yali tasobola kubeera mu fight eyo kubanga emotoka tanakublendinga bulungi n'eki n'omupiira so wova mu event eyo nodda eno gye tugenda mu Italy nze ndaba bulungi nnyo nti Evans agenda kutandika ku dropping up points bwe tunava mu gravel sirowooza nti ajja kubanga leadinga championship eno then bano abajja nga bawangula bagenda zigabana Tanaka alina okuwangula rally season eno ekyo kyo wekiri Thierry alina okuwangula rally nono gundi Andre Fomo ajja kuwangula rally season eno kati mu Toyota omwo muli abantu ababiri abalina sure wins muzee wabazze agenda kuwangula ko then our boy Rovanpera is going to win ababiri Evans ne Paere unless bintu biganye but otherwise I do not see them winning now so we're just going to have a very exciting second half of this half of gravel of the season.
So the event is upon us from the 5th up to the 8th of June 2025. 68 entries, 12 P1 cars. Producer sort of start says is a event, you know, and then we look through them. Then of course one on the other part of ezimu ku statistics eziri mu Darius zenyagadde tuogereko before we move on. Very interesting statistics in there, but for instance what ku statistics is a event yene yes facts and facts, stats and trivia za events. These facts, stats and trivia ahead of the Darius 2025 Rally Italy Sardinia. But pronounced Somera, the first line is what? It's also known as
Rally de Sardinia.
The Sardinia.
The Sardinia.
Linguistic. So to be held between the 5th and the 8th of July, this year will mark the 22nd running of the event. That's a huge milestone. It will be the 6th round of the 2025 World Rally Championship, as well as the 6th on the Darius C2 and the Darius C3 championships. And championship by the way time is October, so a number of events over 16 stages. The big contest 4 on the gravel stage surface. Albert Achogadeka gravel. Competitive distance yeyo. Then Nelaya zone as well. The event attracted 68 competitors, 68 crews, with 12 of them being Priority 1 cars. Of course, the P1 cars, Muribalima manufacturers, 34 WRC2 cars, there's one R2. Then Tanak being the defending champion, having won the event last year. Hyundai as well being the defending manufacturers as well, because Tanak won it last year. Sami Pari Wangula WRC2. And Diego Dominguez near take a very good performance in the WRC3 in the previous year. Nega producer so to ku start sezini mu WRC which are very catching, eye-catching as we discuss for El Sardinia. That one, the list of the youngest drivers in WRC. At what day the first one has Carlo Vampera at the age of 22 and 1 day. You get the Carlo Vampera Baba Komieo because he won the championship at that age, 22 years, and Nadia record Yakol Macreji Aina. He had 27 years and 109 days. I think to that car he should look at that as Singa Damuna Ajiwangulera. It's also a record in that making as well.
And when I look at those figures there, one thing that you can always notice is that the young man is always coming. ekintu abantu kye batategeera, I don't know why we don't understand this, is that look at 29, 21, 27, 21. But when they were racing, wabadde abasajja bakadde who were there before. But the young man always has to come and take over you. So you, the old people, you must go, and the young people will always come. So it is just a revolution of the world.
So Richard Burns, yalinga in that top 10, you were kumi. Age of 30 and 312 days. That's the 2001 championship. Sebastian Loeb, then the driver with
most podiums. Oje, Sebastian Loeb.
Sebastian Loeb, yes, 120. Oje 108.
He's catching up.
Yeah,
like this is 12 of
them. Can he break it?
Oh yeah, he's still driving. Tugamba nti naye waliwo kye tutategeera. Oje yagamba he retired. Naye ajja mu season n'avuga a season with 14 events n'avuga event 7. Obwo kyali retired yo.
Ava mu sabbatical naye kati yawangudde Portugal by I think for the 7th time. Yeah, in his career. Even these celebrations, yalaga the 5 and the 2 to make is done it. Yeah. Producer so damn natuwa ku list eyo.
Ate gundi Tanak nakola the 400th stage win.
Yeah, stage win, yeah.
Something of the sort.
Yeah.
So is the Oje we mutunulako. Oje omanyi woba olina passion yo. Oje loves motorsport, he loves rallying. It's kugamba yembeera ye. So he's ali mu transition okugenda naye nga he still feels he's competitive. Era walaba eri Canaries event ng'agezaako okunoonya Rovampera n'alema omufuna. Era we yazze wano e Portugal yazze ng'ayagala kuba Rovampera live era n'akisucceeding. Naye wanaatuuka ku point nga bamukuba rally 2 consecutively ayinza okivaako nga tavaako because last year yadde afuna ebuzibu nga he gets accidents towards the end. But if he has 3-4 rallies and he's beaten hands down, I think he will say goodbye.
Ne ogamba engeri gy'owadde example yalasa kuba ate mbadde ngenda kireeta nkubuuze nti olowooza accident ezo zaava ku ki kubanga za affectinga nnyo Toyota's manufacturer championship okulaba nti tugenda okuyingira Japan ng'ate Hyundai ekyalina chance nnene nnyo okuwangula manufacturer championship eyo ku Toyota. So mu ndowooza yo olowooza kintu kya myaka, kintu kya competition okweyongeramu, olowooza ki awo?
Nze ku mistakes Oje ze yakola towards the end of last season nze nja kigamba bweti the realization that I actually can be challenged. Omanyi wotuuka ku point nga ekintu okikola bulijjo kubanga Oje woba omulaba ye yatuuka ku point time wetuuka okulwana nga raisinga bba n'agituuka ku level kati eri bba waatuuka yeeyo nga nabagayi tebasobola kukola ki okutuukawo kati we yatuuka nga raisinga ku bbaye bano bagayi ne basigala nga bali ki bali on there. He got shocked in my opinion. Kati mu shockness eyo n'atandika okupanikinga. So he was making simple errors and mu byonna which everybody I don't know if people took note, none of them were navigator. They were completely driver error. So kiba kitegeeza nti yali agenze ku level eri ate bano ne bamutuukako na panicking, he lost his cool. Kati we yakomyewo mu 2025 era mu eno rally ya gundi Canaries eno yabadde tamak singa obadde owulira ku interviews ng'amala nga he's allowing nagamba nze nkoze time naye wali oliga yajja. So he has now accepted nti bano bagayi basobola okukola ki okunkuba. So that is now putting him in a better position I think to win a rally. Neno Tanaka badda mutwala. Exactly. Tanaka badda mutwala bubi nnyo. Naye ye yatuuka ku point nagamba Tanaka yafuna that problem with the actually Tanaka nga tanakufuna your problem. If you watch one of his interviews at the end of the stage yabagamba nti I know he's coming and it's going to be a very big sweet fight. So he knew there was going to be excitement. Kati oli we yavuddeko we would have seen something. I think in Sardinia we definitely are going to see something.
Absolutely. Mukenya, one question for you. Oje's last year seeing as competition kati weri kuwa aina comment jiyawa I think it was in either Canarias or Portugal nagamba nti alabika awulira emyaka gina we gimutuusizza takyasobola ku maintaininga n'abaana abaliwo. What is your position on that fact?
Yeah, I think those are what for starters Oja is doing a few selected events. He's not doing the whole season. And then he's also cognizant of the fact that it's Aegis Cup caught up with him. The commitment levels is high, bafomo, but it's tezibanga gazili. That is why it was even when you bring it back to the locals, people think that the Sebuguzu we saw in that Evo 9 can really fully commit as the one Goyagala in the proto. It's kind of different. So I think never name the urge the Katinga Kalo Kuangula championship at that age. He wants to really as well set his own record. So Kati Abana desires and aspirations in Yinji as compared to you achieving some titles. That's one of those things Okwele Ojoku records are taking low Bokubanga as many, though he has some time because he's not really fully retired. Then producer Twade ku ba winners of championship WRC. I think there are 10 of them are in a single championship. No, there are 13 drivers are in a championship. Nekatloebia seeing under the years 9, yes. 24, 25, 20, 26, 27, 28, 29, 10, 11, 12. Difference where wakati wene oje nti ezize zali consecutive.
Yes.
Ezo no zili 2, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 20, the 21. I think it was almost making it, if you had 1, 19 and 20, 19. It's only one gap by now. The championship mjata wangula.
2.
Ngambe ya okubanti aina that
consecutive
round. Yeah. Producer sotu wakwe liste soka eriko there are 13 drivers are in the championships. Emwemu who have won no Tanak Mwalimu by the way. Okay, yeah, all the struggle area the championship winners what they call it Someya Oje. Neolo Jaina where he has his one, and then I think that also issue Mwejiranti great who is the greatest of all time. I think that really that subject aleta akubisanyo abagamati Lowebi greatest of gold baleka nyo scenario nti 9 in a row atona wangude atano 9 in a row yazwangula mu team one team kona azwangude mu team za njawulo. So three different teams. I remember MG Awango, I think they are 15. Gari mu VW. Gane team principal Toyota Katijali Latvala. It was neck to neck. Well, very virtual, but Oje finally had what it takes to win it.
Absolutely. I mean, conversation is greatest of all time. Tuwadena yo mubitendele imeleja eja sports, especially in basketball. Kubanze nekesh tu tuna kunumia kwa basketball. So it is quite very difficult to kujudging greatest of all time. Kuba generations sizezimu. There are different generations. Generation lobji yavugiramu a little bit different to generation oje yavugiramu, which is also a little bit different to generation kale jali mukuvugiramu kati. So how do you quantify greatest of all time in 3 different generations? Wakati ekibuzo kijjawo ne kigamba nti singa oje yali mu generation ya Lobeyo yali very consistent n'okuwangula championships ezo omwenda kyandibadde kitya. Singa kale yali mu generation eyo oje yawangulira championships omwenda olala omunana kyandibadde kitya. So agree to disagree. Generational, generational. Different generations have different goals. But again, question nekomao. When they say greatest of all time,
that means it encompasses all generations. Who's your greatest of all time?
You have Kankune.
Your greatest of all time?
My greatest of all time is Sebastian Loeb.
Is that a Miko? But the Miko is
when I tuna kugundia greatest of all time, especially Sebastian Loeb and Sebastian Oje. Baba they in the same generation. Rana Sebastian Loeb Sebastian Oje yaliko junior driver mu Citroen. Era na graduating and era senior driver. Then navayo nga baganya okkiriziganya n'agenda mu n'agenda mu VW. In fact, he spent a whole season ng'avuga Skoda nga it's
S2000.
S2000. N'ateekawo record. He's the only guy in S2000 winning a stage, by the way.
Yes.
Nga WRC ezo ziri.
Yeah.
Kati n'avaawo then na developing a Volkswagen. Kati we yakoma on Volkswagen ate omukulu nga is in his what?
S2000 not kawete gundi yavugako Kenya Quinton Mitchell.
Okay. Kati oyo we yakomawo nga Sebastian Loeb is on his way out. Naye with VW and Citroen they had very big fights. Kati kyena singa okutya ku Sebastian Loeb we yakoma okuvuga Monaco mu Ford. Which was I think 20 I don't remember the year, but it was either
the beginning of the new era of our regulation, which was 2021.
Before that was COVID, after COVID.
After COVID.
Ogenda n'osomako ku kintu ekyo, if you go and read about it. Sebastian Loeb was doing the Paris-Dakar rally. He came in from Paris-Dakar, went to Monte Carlo, and did 3 days of testing. We agenda n'avuga eyo motoka yagisanga nga balina bwe bagisetinga n'agikola mu test. Omanyi kyeyagamba Mark Wilson n'agamba the way it is, let's not touch anything. N'agenda first time he had done some testing before, but it was first time okugivuga competitively. By the end of the rally he was behind Ogier by a couple of seconds. That was when I believe this guy is really good. Secondly, he went on and caused Ogier got a puncture and he won. Has the Ford ever won another event after that? It only won again on tarmac. It won with Tanner.
Event Jogamba, Ogier Loeb the Angular event out of with experience, because for him he anticipated it won't rain. These ones anticipated it to rain. Scale with a puncture and he won the championship.
So those
he won the rally.
Those are factors of being the greatest of all time.
So he's the greatest of all time.
Because you can read the weather and all that.
We read the weather. We go into a break, then get back with more of your sporting stories. All right, we'll be back from that short commercial break. It's the Podium to be back every single Monday from 10 p.m. to midnight, where we preview and review the latest node of sports, the node of motorsport, local scene, African scene, as well as on the international scene. Much sooner than later, we're going to come to we got Mona Singh Jr. did accept our request to join us on this show. So by your event, Mabega Cow, which was the Mona Singh, in memory of Mona Singh, a huge legend in motorsport in Zambia as well as on the African continent. So by an event this month, so before that event, we lost Mona Singh to Mona Singh Junior. Yaja kwa 2016 yali ku Quest Year Championship ya 2016 ya ARC, which was won by Don Smith. Ate mu 2016 so wana tuli mu studio ministers twino mukulu ya wangu rale yo yawa overall by the ezimu ku cruises ezaizu wangu deko the ARC the Pearl of Africa rally ngaziri nga they are locals. Asanari Enokli Royalinga, Starboy, Nozo with the Nkutako Mungalo champion, za winner, Duzanango put the Angula Pal was this. Then the championship Angua Don Smith, Smith, a Moka Jayavuga, Evugibwa Samuel Buete Sawe, so how things can evolve. So Muna Japan Mufuna Mumaso. Then okay, away from that into what has been making, I think what is dominating right now in Ugandan motorsport is the review of the constitution in line or in tandem with the National Sports Act, which was assented to by the president and passed and assented to by the president in August 2023. Federations Bazwa, what is on ground is Bazwa Paka 20th of June to align themselves with the act and do, if you want to be a federation, 75% coverage, an association 50% coverage, then even element today region general assembly 50% of the districts in Uganda. Uganda has 146 districts. So federations on this thing as well is lining themselves. For TV, that was at Katikati restaurant where different clubs came in. Ngabajja ne minds zazo meeting at the Constitutional Review Working Group, and one of those ones, good enough, we never represent Albert Ofong from Uganda, JB Musisari for TV. Oh no, they are representing a CMC. You guys, what have made of the process? Even today, there's been a meeting with competitors, XCOM met competitors, giving their views, so that we have an EGM by Narabe Maulide. EGM, the notice calling for the Extraordinary General Assembly, Yafurumye, on the 14th of this very month. If you look at the agenda ya EGM, the notice came out and it says that it's going to discuss the notice of the Extraordinary General Assembly to all member clubs and stakeholders from General Secretary FMU. Subject notice of the FMU Extraordinary General Assembly pursuant to Article 7.1.7 of the Constitution of the Federation of Motorsport Clubs of Uganda, and in line with the ongoing process to align FMU governance structures with the National Sports Act 2023. Notice is hereby given for an extraordinary general meeting EGA to be held on 14th June at Katikati Venue Lugogo on starting at 10 a.m. rather. Agenda, roll call and confirmation of forum, opening remarks, presentation of Treasurer's financial report, presentation of the revised draft constitution by Constitutional Review Working Group and Legal and Disciplinary Commission of FMU, consideration and adoption of the proposed draft FMU constitution, resolution on submission to the National Council of Sports for compliance and recognition, then finally closure of the club and Oxendikala members. But that was the notice here fulumizibwa mawulire. So the EGM is upon us from the 14th. On the 14th of this very month. Today is 2nd. We have 12 days to the EGM. What have you made of the process so far?
Well, go to attend this show.
In fact, there are processes.
The processes.
It's a single process.
Go to attend this show. And we get a nsonga ya transition, smooth transition from the competitive side of the sport into the administrative side of the sport. Well, the process is quite enlightening. Kubanga chintu echimu tetwasookera ddala okulaba nti twali twetaaga okubeerawo n'enkyukakyuka mu constitution yali running federation yaffe, era nga meeting eyo gye twateninga ebifaananyi bye ku Fufa TV, mukulu Albert Ofongwe tutumulina wano amunoonya, nti kyalina okukyukamu okulaba motorsports gyali egenda, ate nga ne process twali twagitandika way before the act came in as well, you know. So okulaba nti act we agendera okupassinga president and the president assented to it, kakati ye process gye tugezaako okuharmonizinga at this moment, okulaba nti tutuuka ku ki ekinene kye tulina okutuukako at this point. Process ebadde quite very enlightening kubanga ereesemu aspect empya gye tubadde tutategeera bulungi nnyo mu muzannyo gwa motorsports, which is the corporate style of governance, you know. So nze ndaba mu bino byonna tugezaako okutuukiriza nti awo wabadde akakwakuliza akangi abantu ke batategedde nti style ya corporate governance eba ne very different organogram oba organizational structure, ate nga ye point of contention esingiddeyo ddala okuba ennene mu kyendabye ne mu meeting eyo gye mulaba ebifaananyi byebadde mulaba ku FIFA TV, nti era y'ensonga eyasinga okuvaamu eyali enkulu. Ate ne meeting gye tubaddemu this evening as well yabadde quite a bit of contentious points of this constitutional review, naye nga era nga bwe nagambye mu submission yange esoose nti change is imminent. Omuzungu agamba we need to change, we need to advance. If you don't change, change will change you. Kakati tuli mu moment eyo at the minute eya change, nti we need to embrace the change. At the end of the day, how you embrace change and how you work with change is very, very important. So kachuliko kati right now, the for lack of a better word, the push and shove and, you know, trying to get people to understand the direction in which the sport has to move. Tulina okutunula beyond tomorrow. Tutunulire 5 years from now. Where does the sport go 5 years from now? Iranze breaching all the way from my club, all the way to these meetings we're having with the Constitutional Review Working Group, all the way to EXCOM, and all the way to the competitors who are the stakeholders of the sport. Tuleme kutunulira ncha, tutunulire 5 to 10 years from now. So nze kyegezaako okuhighlightingira abantu batunuliremu nti buli kye tukola kati kirina okubeera ne impact in the next 5 years or 5 years from now. So mu buli kimu kye tugezaako okukwasaganya n'okugezaako okutambulira wamu n'okwaligninga to the Sports Act, the sport is bigger than all of us. And that has to be our point of coming together to understand omuzanyo gutusinga obunene era buli kye tukola tulina okutunulira omuzanyo nti gulina okudevelopinga to even much bigger than what we are right now.
But looking at what has been making rounds, initially the Constitutional Review Working Group met all the 16 clubs. Then after the Executive Committee, what we were told is that the Executive Committee walked out of that meeting. They need to do more consultations. The Executive Committee, the whole of last week, the bigger part of last week, Batula, and they came up with they did more consultations and came up with a document, with a draft. More so changing the organogram, and we've been privy to, me and Albert, today's meeting about the organogram of how they think the structure should be, more or less shifting away from the previous one that was presented by the committee, the working group. This time on it's kind of trying to look like the one we have, the current constitution we have, but you have the General Assembly, you have the board, then you have the EXCOM ones then once you are EXCOM, you have the president, the general secretary or the CEO, then the side you have the vice presidents, then we now know the CEO, and C secretariat, then decide in commissions, in an electoral committee audit, and maybe try to kind of, then of course they zoned the clubs. So every club in Uganda, of the 16 member clubs, every club has a region where against it, and it's covering them districts. So that has been basically it's all leading up to the 14th of June extra general assembly.
Okay. First and foremost, kusaidi yange njagala first of all to congratulate all of us of having reached this point. A constitution review or a constitution is a document jemuteekawo eba guiding engeri gyemugenda kukolamu ebintu byammwe. That constitution is enabling you function as an organization, and in that functioning you know how to treat each other. One thing motorsport has really lacked for a very long time is the lack of respect for each other. And the lack of respect for each other has been brought about by the failure of the system to work. And because people are deprived by particular individuals, because the system wasn't working well, anger develops. And with anger, you can never work well. So first and foremost, we have arrived at this juncture, an opportunity presents itself. For Jakunsonyo, I cannot speak in Luganda to express myself in this particular area. So, in 2013, if I'm not mistaken, the constitution was changed. 2013 or 2014?
2014.
Yeah.
At Silver Springs Hotel.
At Silver Springs Hotel. A group of people sat down after they were instructed by the AGM to change the constitution. And after that change in 2014, a constitution was put in place. That constitution after 2014, like maybe 3 years after that or 2 years after that, a request to change it came up again. And that request has remained there. If you go back in the history of FMU, there has always been, every leader who has come has always been asked to change the constitution. For our members who are there and who are listening, our old constitution had a very serious error in the role of the management and the role of the EXCO. It was a very big error in that constitution. As a regard to that,
all right, we can go together on break. Let's first go into a short commercial break. But come on, then we pick it up from there. All right, we're back from that short commercial break. It's Podium to back every single Monday into our last segment of today's show. Show every single Monday from 10 p.m. to midnight, where we preview and review the in the world of motorsport. Prior to that break, Albert had a submission here at what the preamble we have been through from the 20th, from the amendment of the FMA Constitution is very cognizant of our past. By the way, please, you have the floor.
As I was making my presentation, we have had a constitutional review request long before the government of Uganda decided to have
the
Sports Act.
National Sports Act.
So the confidence and the willingness to do that had delayed for all these years. So in that respect, I thank the government of Uganda for having put in the Sport Act, which the government of Uganda is the people of Uganda. And as a result of that, we have got the courage to cross that bridge. So as we do this, I would want to go with Enoch. Motorsport will be here 100 years after I have left. Motorsport will be here 100 years after our generation has gone. So whatever constitution we are putting in place is not for us, it's for the future. And conflict never allows growth. You can never have growth where there is conflict. We have a country like, just a little bit of examples. The upper part of Sudan, there's conflict, there's no growth. Palestine, there's conflict, no growth. Anywhere there is conflict, there is no growth. You can't grow. Investors won't come, nobody will not come. So whatever constitution you put in place must be able to enable growth, and that must be transparency, and people must be able to evolve through it. So right now, the government of Uganda came up with the act, and it defines how a federation should be, and it defines how you should work. We have to be a body corporate, all right? And bodies of that nature have a way they function, and it is there. It is set up. So, in whatever we are doing, if we do not set up something that can operate as a company and can operate properly, we will continue fighting till death do us come. And we will totally break the sport down into pieces. So, whatever we are doing, we need to go through this process having that in the back of our minds. The Act refers to our competitor as the main stakeholder of our sport. The Act refers to this competitor and as the athlete, and everything is done in his best interest. So we must be cognizant of that, and we must make sure that this particular stakeholder is allowed to grow, he's allowed to flourish, and is allowed to bring more generations through. The Act also has put us in a situation where the sport must go around the country. The Constitution is a document that you can change, but it must be given a lifetime to operate because of the fairness in which it operates. So we as an organization are in a very opportune time in which we can set our sport to really hit the targets that it's supposed to be. Case in point, we are hosting Africa Cup of Nations in Uganda. We already hosted the Africa Cup of Nations of motor rallying. We have hosted it a number of years, but it has never been projected the way it's supposed to be projected. The event looks not to be a national event, it seems to belong to a certain group of people. Whereas it should be the entire Uganda that is doing that. So we have an opportunity to do things that make that better. 3, in the world today, sports is not just sports. It's an industry. It can provide employment for the youngest generation that we have in this country. We have, according to statistics, we are young, we are talented, we have a lot of manpower. So this industry called sports is actually a job opening. We as the motorsport world in Uganda can create jobs for fellow Ugandans and make sure that our young generation is fully occupied and is getting benefits out of this. So all this comes from the way this constitution is set up. And that's the picture, I believe the picture of the act in Uganda is to portray and push for that. So we are at a very opportune time, but we must think very strongly and think much more outside our generation, and let the future return to us and credit us for having put something together. So for me, that is, in terms of process, the process that we have done with the group that is meeting with the different clubs, again, our will to agree to change is what delayed this entire process. Because in 2020, in the administration of Mr. Dipuru Pareria, in his very first AGM, the General Assembly gave him authority to change the constitution. And this group of people were put in place then, but it is up to today that we have reached here. How many years later? Quite a lot of time.
2022, that's when they were given them.
2022, 2025.
If you look at the preamble in the documents, it's very stipulated. Baga, they were given the mandate to review and provide amendments to the constitution. They were because there are a number of questions. Have we outlived this current constitution?
Just a quick one, sorry to interrupt you. I see on the TV there's executive committee meet drivers today in Lugogo.
Yeah.
Did the drivers have an opportunity to meet this review commission?
No, the drivers met the executive committee.
But they didn't meet the review commission?
They didn't meet the review commission. That is the point.
That's a strange one.
Yeah. Now, what I was saying, they met the executive committee, but by a chance, a meeting, the review committee, because every club was asked to provide a list for committee.
You see, in our process, one thing that we need to understand, and we need to keep this in mind. Of course, time is moving forward, but this competitor is a very important stakeholder. This competitor and the spectator that watches the event. These two people are very important people. So this group of our leaders, we have a very special environment we operate in, that I would think you are both competitors. If I was to put you in a room as competitors alone, without administrators, I think you would speak differently. So I would have assumed and think that the competitors should have had an interaction with this group and have that interaction for receiving information one-on-one and get from that group their idea and come back into a wider group with their intake. Of course, the opportunity to write and submit documents was given, but we need to also look at our people. Our people are not good at doing such things. So as the main stakeholder, I believe an opportunity should be given to them, or should have been given to them, to address themselves in their own environment with whatever they have to say, because they need to feel that they're part of this process, right? So
I happen to have been part of that meeting, and they were asking that question, the executive committee, after them, because after the working group meeting, of the 16 clubs, of course some clubs, all club entirely, despite the fact that it was invited, but then they met the executive committee of the 16 clubs plus management. We were called executive committee. Executive but to come with that meeting, they discussing, then they walked out. They needed more time to consult. That's why in the preamble, the bigger part of last week, they were discussing on how best they can maybe understand the document much better, and they also bring up their suggestions. Kati bagana sikana the working group on Thursday. That's what I'm told, on Thursday. But before they thought it wise of meeting our competitors separated, though newali ba competitors bajja ne basinkananga working group muchi club sessions, and okay, we've been part of that. We've been part of that meeting today.
I just like to repeat this. For me, I find it important to be. I don't want to use the word honest, but I want to be as direct as possible. You must have consensus from your competitors. You must have consensus from them. Because at the end of the day, if you're looking at that screen there, at the back of our face, or that car that is moving there, that car belongs to that driver. Who is driving that car? That is the person who drives that car, that buys with their money that car. and that car is what everybody comes to see. So if you're making a constitution that is going to govern that person who buys that car with his own money, he must feel that he was part of it. So having a conversation with the executive is very good. It's very fine. I do not have a problem with that. I believe it is okay. But having a conversation with the competitor in his own atmosphere is very, very important, because in that room where we were, apart from yourself, Enoch, and who else did I see in the room? If we look at the number of times a competitor picked up the microphone to speak, it was very little. So otherwise, the competitor should have given an opportunity in his own environment to meet with these people, where he can criticize me, his vice president, openly, where he can criticize anybody in administration of his club, of the federation, openly, in an environment where he cannot be picked out. And that would give you an opportunity to share his views. And when you get that view, then you can go back and fine-tune it. Not that you're going to pass everything he has given, but he has felt he's part of the process. So that is a very important part in my view. People might not like my comments about that, but I just can't, my heart just can't allow me to say things like that.
What I was saying is, just as computers have met the executive committee, because even that question was mooted, why are we meeting the executive committee? Why are we meeting them anyway? Why are computers meeting? Is it that they are, because the executive committee are the presidents of the 16 clubs plus management. So are competitors, are they part of the executive committee? The answer is no. What did they need to see to meet the working group? Like, okay, if the executive committee is calling us, let's first go listen. Then we still have tomorrow, Wednesday, and see whether we can meet. We can also request the working group to maybe give us audience. The challenge is they might, I'm not preempting them, but they might say there was the other part where we asked clubs to send computers. But again, even then, they also, part of the meeting, the Basinkanam clubs, there were members of the executive committee at that meeting as well.
But you know, we sorry to repeat it, we need to be where we are. We know the people we are dealing with, you know? So it is a basic fact of truth that a competitor in a room with people of authority that can affect his result might not say what he wants to say. And that's a fact.
They're a bit gagged,
not gagged, it's just the way we are. That for some reason the outspoken driver is always treated in a different way. So as a result of that, people have now decided to sit back. So the truth of the matter is that in an environment where there is certain people around, they might not be able to express themselves. So it is important that they get that opportunity. If there's still time, let them get that opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, yes, there are deliberations on the Muade. Zili quite very important. Ate zikirizamu. Naye again, njagala ku ekoyinga Bukenya kyoyogeddeko ekiwandiiko ekyo bwe kyafuluma ekyali ki-invitinga clubs okujja okutuula ne constitutional review working group okuyita mu constitution gye baali bakoze, baali very specific mu paragraph emu gye bagamba at least 40% of the club's competitors should be in these meetings, okubeera ne deliberation within the club. Why? Mwali mwebuzizako akagambo waki basaba 40% of competitors? Because in the old constitution, the clubs that make up this federation are made up of competitors. Yeah? Ate nga bagezaako okwencouraginga nnyo ba competitors within your clubs to have a voice, because you're the ones who make up the club, and the club is supposed to work for you, the competitor, to make sure byoyagala okutuukiriza ku lunaku lwa event oba byoyagala okulaba motorsports nga direction gyegendamu biva mumwe ne bigenda ku federation level. Ensonga lwaki ndowooza bagamba nti 40% of competitors in clubs should be a part of this review process, you know, with the working group and the clubs as well. Nze ndaba si kiri kuba baatambulira ku constitution nga bwegamba. But again, Albert Cha ekolinza okugamba nti kyandibadde ekintu kirungi nnyo ba competitor nga bo as a very big stakeholder in the sport have a chance to directly get their views of what the constitution review process is to the committee. Nakyo si kibi. At the end of the day, temulina kinene kyemuluzinga okugamba nti let the competitors meet this constitution review group directly, because at the end of the day era Albert wagambye there might be that chance or that lack of chance competitor omuja ayinza okugamba nti probably in my club my voice might not be heard or might not be echoed as I want it to be echoed. Ate tubirabye, there have been situations where a competitor has a concern agilese to club level but it's not translating from the club to the management team. So sirabawo nnyo kakwakulizo, and I don't see a reason why the competitors as a big stakeholder in the sport should not be able to meet the constitutional review group as competitors.
Yeah, because even this from the what has been deliberated at the constitutional level, the executive level with competitors.
Yes.
This current constitution, if you're an active competitor, you can't engage in club in administration.
Club administration, yes.
You only XCOM level, you only engage if you come in to compete as a guest. You can compete, but as a guest. But this new setup reserve competitors to you can be a competitor at the same time as an administrator. So even a competitor can be a member of the board.
Yes.
So if you can be elected to be a member of the board, you can. But though direct representation at the board, the competitor, I know that if the association barondamo omuntu agenda representing kwa wano baganti there are 9, there are 16 clubs apparently. Of the 16 bajako clubs za musanvu. Dejako members musanvu. Then the 9 you are forming a board. So it's among the competitors by naku muzino clubs.
I think you need to clarify on that a bit. Let us not push out information which can cause a bit of a stir. The 16 clubs as we speak right now, the board is supposed to be an elected process whereby everybody participates and elect, not people eliminated and others are picked.
But not all 16 clubs comprise the board.
No. Yeah. 16 clubs should comprise the room that elects the board, right? So that everybody is participating, and then out of the 9 you have a leadership, like you elect a group of people in that point, so that everybody has participated in the process of bringing the leadership. Just to quickly pop onto you, in terms of the Echibirao internationally, the drivers have a representation at the FIA level for the WRC. It just has to be there. Even this act asks for it. For example, in football, I'm sure there's a competitors association. So you must have them represented at that point because their interest is important. In Uganda, where we are the national championship, we do not have manufacturers. The manufacturer is the driver. Yeah, so we need to get his input. What is his cost elements? How do we reduce those cost elements? How do we negotiate to government to enable him work properly? So all that input must come from his perspective. I was a competitor so many years ago. I can have an idea, but I'm not like you who is there today. So you who is there today is more updated in what you require. So I must have your input. So echocho mu design yafe tulina opportunity eriwo. If it is possible, it should happen. But as the drivers, even in the first meeting of Mr. Rupareria's governance, he requested drivers to form associations. Because the drivers groups must be represented with associations. In our scenario that we have here, even if there are 4 different associations, right, in the beginning, then you merge them to become one, so that you can have a voice from each and everybody presented somewhere. And from those voices, you're able to tell what the terrain is all about.
Okay, the Agent Badegambe structure is the one that the executive has.
Yes.
As a result
their
of
proposition
their
from what
proposition,
the Constitutional Review Working Group came up with. Yes.
And your parting shots?
My parting shots, again, nga bwe natandise show, ne mu submission yange nga tutandika segment eno, change is imminent. Twetaaga okutunuulira 5 years from now omuzannyo gye gugenda. Twetaaga okutunuulira beyond the scope to much further of the regulation that we need to put in place to be able to support the growth of motorsports as a whole together in a unified sense. Okulaba nti bwevaawo leero, Kenya bwevaawo leero, Albert bwavaawo leero, omuzannyo gusigala gukula ku constitution eyo gye tutambulirako. So in as much as we keep on deliberating, nga era ng'omuzungu bwagamba nti true or false, your idea, my idea, at the end of the day, there has to be progression. Tulina okuprogressinga. Ate progression y'omuzannyo nga ffenna tuli together tutambulira ku line emu.
Right, I'll be in one or two.
For me, all I want to say is that the next champion is about 12, even 6 years old. We must give him an opportunity to be a champion. And that's the person we are looking at. The rest of us, our time is gone. So we must prepare for that guy who is 6 years old to find the best way to become the world champion, and he's a Ugandan. That's our job.
All right, that's all we've had for you today. We'll definitely get back next week. And I've been out of Motorsport Madekesh, Albert, Enoch, Starboy. We'll get back next week with all the latest in the world of Motorsport. We wish you a good night and good week ahead of us. We're out.